Akademiks can't ride no wave.
Yeah, this will be the monologue. Chad, I've said before, hip hop is in a transitional year. Okay, and it's in a transitional year because of many different factors. Business wise, the labels are figuring shit out. Artist wise, they're figuring shit out. And for fans, our attention has never been more scattered than now. Fans these days, I was having a conversation about music, and people are saying, everybody's trying to figure out what is it about music. As I said, there's a lot of things to blame, right? The labels aren't spending as much. They're being a little bit cautious. They're watching for AI. Some of them are public, so they're relying on their catalog. It's a really interesting game that's happening when it comes to labels. And yes, when labels spend, music is more prolific, and it proliferates all the platforms and your airwaves a little bit more, or earwaves or earbuds, whatever. They're not doing that as much. Artists as well, they're at there's a bunch of artists that I believe this is going to be the make or break it years. It was supposed to be last year, but they ducked out, right? 2024 was the year of Kendrick and Drake. Everybody, I talked to these artists behind the scenes. They're like, no, we don't want to drop, all the attention's on them. Cool. 2025 happens. They're like, yeah, you know what? We're waiting, but, whatever. And I'm like, all right, so you niggas going to drop? Everybody kind of waited. Okay, end of the year. This is a year that everybody's supposed to drop. And it's a make it or break it year for a lot of these. And I've said this before, these middle class artists. There's a couple of artists that probably sold, and let me give you an explanation. A couple of artists that probably sold 60K before, maybe 70. This year, if they drop, they're going to sell 15, honestly. It's cooked. It's really that cooked. And what happens is that a lot of these artists are so scared of first week sales because the headline alone that this artist went from here to here will switch up the perception on them being considered washed. At least out of sight, out of mind, people might just think that they're, busy touring, they're cooking up the album. Most of these guys already got their album done. These niggas, man. These niggas get high for a weekend and make 5 albums. None of these guys are really, gone are the days where people be like, I gotta live. Drake was one of the only artists to be like, you gotta live for a little bit to create some shit. I can't just create music, rapping about whatever I see on the ceiling or TV. Gotta live. But these artists, for the most part, they do. You know what I mean? And again, some of the artists we love. But, artists like Young Thug and Future, we love those artists in terms of music. But they cook up music at a rapid pace. Most artists that haven't dropped in 2025, it's not because they're working on an album. It's because they realize they're at a make or break point. They're either fighting with their label for renegotiation. Some of them are in their last year. Remember, it's always, there's a last album curse. No label will spend money if you're on your last album when you're walking out the door. They don't want to give you the extra promotion, the extra budget. No, you're going to take all that hype, that big first week sales, negotiate a bigger bag to somewhere else and go there. They don't want you to do that. Which, by the way, I think we should watch out for NBA YoungBoy's situation, I think, too. I think NBA YoungBoy, he's at that point where his deal is up or is about to be up. And I predict he's going to go back to Atlantic, I think. I think Atlantic, even though he's had a tumultuous relationship with them, I think Mike Herron specifically gets YoungBoy. YoungBoy is just not a normal artist. He drops when he wants to drop. He drops frequently. And it's something where the majority of labels, even though it sounds good to have a NBA YoungBoy, it's really hard to deal with. If the guy drops music willy-nilly, like, for example, the Boss Man D-Lo freestyle, it's not on DSPs even now. You're playing catch-up when he'll record a song tonight, do the video tomorrow, and drop it by the nighttime. Now you're usually a label takes at least a couple weeks. You're behind the 8 ball. You got to find producers. Where's the agreements? Now all the details are different because the song is going up. People are trying to charge you extra. The percentages are fucked. The labels can't really work like that for the most part. Atlantic tried their best, but he's with Capitol, and Capitol. I think that we have to think about his biggest albums. They've came out primarily on Atlantic, and I just think that they get him, and the people at the top that didn't want to pay him, they're out of there. So the Julie Greenwald and the Mike Kaiser, they're out of there. And they have some new people over there. So I think YoungBoy's going to go back. I think we're going to see a little bit of maneuvering this year too. Drake got to make his decision. Is he going to stay at UMG? Is he going to leave? Is he going to go independent? Does Sony got a bag for him? What's up with Warner? Where does he go? Remember, if he's beefing with UMG, that's Lucian Grange. If you go to Warner, guess who basically runs Warner? Lucian Grange's son. So I guess you would only have to, if you're going to a major, you're going to Sony. I mean, you could go the Bad Bunny route. I don't know if you, well, I guess that's through Sony because it's called the Orchard, but it's under Sony. It's like a distribution realm. I think Sony Red turned into that. I got to look it up. But anyway, the point is we're going to see some musical chairs this year. It's a make or break year for many artists. For the big artists, I think, they have their individual issues. I think this is a year we'll figure out for Drake. Was there really any effect from that battle, right? This is your first solo album since the battle. If the sales are the same, if it's a phenomenal album, hey, it might be a little dust up that may not go his way, according to some, but no harm, no foul. And the further he moves away from that, I think the further people will stop thinking about those narratives that came out of that battle. J. Cole dropped his album. I think everything is on point for J. Cole. I think, the more I see J. Cole, I realize that, yeah, he was popping it, but we put him in a place he should have never been. J. Cole's a guy for his fans. I think he did a phenomenal rollout. I said what he was doing is performative. I seen a few people react to it. I seen Joe Budden respond to it, and he was just like, yeah, of course. Like, rappers are performative. And I didn't say it was a bad thing. Because, again, I've said this before, hip-hop is about portraying an image. The point about J. Cole, what I was saying is that, I think fans love it for the nostalgia and how humble he is. But the performative part, nobody believes, right? Like, nobody believes that he's actually, like, outside of this rollout ever going to be driving a Honda Civic, right? Like, nobody really believes that, right? Like, some people say what Kai Cenat is doing performative. Maybe it's not. Maybe Kai's really sewing sweaters, like, in a sweatshop somewhere in China or in Paris. I don't know what the fuck. So, some performative stuff is believable. Like, NLE Choppa, some of the stuff I've seen him do, you could call it performative. But if he was really feeding his girls BBL pills, maybe he was really into that. Remember the NLE chakra wave? Hey, you never know. So some of the stuff is performative. Some, maybe it is performative, but it's believable. Whether or not it's believable or not, does it get the job done? I will say J. Cole has gotten the job done. I have no real critique of J. Cole's album. Also, I think people were expecting me to have some scathing, review or disrespect his album. He made the album for the people who've been supporting him for 20 years. I completely get that. I'm not one of the people who have been a super fan of his. I don't see why I need to, like, kick the albums back in. It didn't sound, like, amazing, but it didn't sound trash. It sounded pretty okay, pretty good. I could see if I'm a J. Cole fan, I would love it, right? So it is what it is. Kendrick, I believe, this is a make or break year for him as well. If you ask me, I've always said ever since Drake came out, he's ruled every year, right? I want to say post 2010, right? He's been, if you ask me, the MVP of rap, okay? And we're talking about big leagues of rap, because I know some of y'all are like, well, didn't you say YoungBoy was MVP last year? Or Cardi or whatever. He's been the MVP every year, except for 2017. I gave that to Kendrick Lamar. That's the year he dropped Damn. And I'm going to be honest. I think for 2024, I think Kendrick was MVP as well. For 2025, obviously didn't put out much music, and that's what I'm saying. Like, we're talking about a top level league here, because obviously people could say YoungBoy. That he's like my personal pick overall. But Cardi as well, because Cardi pretty much had the biggest hip hop album that year. But I would probably say, we could say Kendrick's reign is 2 years, like 2024 and 2025. Now, I personally believe when people keep mentioning a dot era, for a dot era to exist, it has to be 3 years. Like, every great rapper has had a 3-year run where they can't be fucked with. No, Lil Baby. Literally. Right? Whether we're going from 50, arguably longer than 3 years, 2003 to 2007 or 2008. Kanye, I think we're just going to say from 2005 to whatever, or 2004 to whatever, you know? Definitely from 2004 to like about 2012, like right till when he dropped about Yeezus. I would say, Jesus, right? That was a great era. Wayne, I'd probably say, you know, you could kind of stretch years here. Some would say 2005 to 2009 or 10. When did he go to jail? But some might say 2006 to 2009. Whatever the case is, he had like an impeccable run then. Drake, again, you know, I feel like he's just summed up a bunch of different runs. We got 2010 to 2013, and then 2013 to like beefing with Meek, and then after that to the Pusha T. So I think he just had a bunch of runs. And I think for Kendrick, this is just, again, I'm not saying this has to be facts, right? I'm just saying how I look at things when we're going to think about the history of hip hop. For Kendrick to have a run, I think this needs to be an important year for him, because I gave him the last 2 years. Last 2 years, okay, you got it. This year, if he still outshines everyone, I think we could say legitimately for the last 3 years, we're in quote unquote the dot era. But I wouldn't crown it an era if he had one really good year battling, then the other year he toured and dropped an album and we don't hear from him again. So if he drops this year, which I'm under good authority to you know, I'll still say speculate that he has some things up his sleeve and not just being on Baby Keem's album. So we'll see what he has to do as well. But, you know, I kind of started this with saying the middle of the pack, we're waiting for those guys. You know, who are these people? Give me 1 second. Anyway. All right, anyway. All good. All right. All right. I kind of lost my train of thought here. All right. Other than that, yeah. So we're in an interesting time. I guess the next thing, like, you know, before we kind of get into some topics here, I do want to kind of discuss is, you know, obviously some top level business that's affecting what's going on. And I particularly feel that the labels are, let me say, I wouldn't say they're salty, but I feel like they're trying to figure out a way to maximize and monetize some of these guys' audience. Now, I want to just show you an interesting stat, which you have to imagine these labels are taking note at. For example, it was just reported recently, right? And, you know, I'll give you some numbers. And again, I'll say alleged, but, you know, I have good authority that these numbers are kind of like, you know, spot on. Here we go. Sorry. Okay, where is it? Give me 1 second. I'll put it up. Where is it? Down here a little bit more. Okay. Of course I can't find it, right? I can never find something when I want to find it. Anybody else have that problem? Okay, here we go. So, let me just try to make my point off of this. So, according to Torrent Data, which is, you know, this is official website or official company that actually, you know, they kind of accumulate or they tabulate all the numbers from, you know, everyone's tours, the current tours and current shows to show how many tickets sold and the revenue gain. NBA Masters Tour, which lasted from, if I remember correctly, like September 1st all the way till like early December, right? So in the span of like 3 months or so, he made $70 million from his live shows. Now, this is like the interesting thing. Remember I told you the labels, they're always trying to figure out a way to get money? They're trying to figure out a way how to increase their revenue. And in trying to increase their revenue, what they've been doing is like trying to hit the streaming services over the head. They're asking Spotify, could you raise the prices? Could you da-da-da? And you have to think about where we are currently in hip-hop. YoungBoy's tour grossed $70 million. He signed to Capitol, was it for like 2 or 3 albums? For like $35 million, right? So for 2 to 3 years, $35 million, the label is kind of looking at it to say, well, through our promotion and also you dropping this music, obviously he had a whole career before on Atlantic. They're looking at it on the aspect of YoungBoy is making $70 million from shows, yet they're still trying to monetize strictly his streams to try to validate why they paid him $35 million, right? What does that mean? It's not that there's not money in music, but it feels like labels are in this weird position now because all the money are going to these ancillary places that they're not really in bed with these artists with. Rod Wave, yeah, he might get whatever money from Alamo, but he's going to go on tour and he's going to go make $40 million. He's getting $2 million per show. So basically his recording contract, he's not really bugging that much on the record label, but the record label is realizing, hey, we're the engine for all of this money. So what's going to happen? Now, I told you, they want to make more money. Everybody wants to make more money. They're hitting the streaming services over the head already, right? They're like, yo, raise the price. Yo, do this. Yo, pay us more per stream. The streaming service keep telling them, yo, listen, we can't pay you more, blah, blah, blah. Hey, we're going to raise it $1. Okay, that's going to mean a couple $100 more million into the pot. We're going to divvy it up. But the labels keep saying, we want more. Now, an interesting thing is starting to happen because in the last couple of years, the music industry realized that one of their leaders in revenue is not only streaming revenue, that's still the number one thing, but let me see. But it's also selling vinyls, right? Now, keep in mind, how many of you guys have like a vinyl player, right? Probably don't, right? It's a record player, like, you know, the big ass black thing. You have to put it like the needle down. You probably don't. Maybe your grandma has it, your great grandfather, but you probably don't. However, it's a collector's item. You know what I mean? Shit, I went to interview A$AP Rocky. He gave me 2 vinyls. I don't even have a record player. I got Kanye West vinyls. I don't have a record player. So you kind of get to the point of kind of like trying to figure out, at least for the labels, how do you make more money? And their solution, honestly, is this, right? They want to go straight to consumer, right? And what they did is they actually made a deal recently. It got announced today that Universal Music struck a deal with a superfan platform. It's called Even to power direct-to-consumer sales for artists worldwide. Universal Music Group has struck a new multi-year agreement with Even, a superfan platform that lets its artists sell music and engage with fans directly. Okay, the deal established them as the direct-to-fan resource for UMG, providing major label artists with turnkey tools for engaging superfans with early access to music. Now, I'm going to tell you, again, it's always this constant fight of who owns what and where the rights are. Artists and their own teams used to be, you know, making their own website, and they were kind of going direct-to-consumer, even though they had to bring their label in. Now the label is signing, or the label did a deal with this company, which, by the way, this company is very interesting. I'm going to tell you more about it in a little bit. The agreement would allow UMG to offer physical music and merchandise through Even using the UMG Global direct-to-consumer vinyl and merch infrastructure. Now, this is a real clever way by the labels to try to get in on some of the money. Like, think about this. Your Rod Wave, he gave me the math on it. Rod Wave, the reason why he's doing his own tour is that not only is he going to do like $1 million in tickets, he's going to do $400,000 or $300,000 every show in merch, right? Like he's huge in merch. So he used to bring a merch company to do it. Then he realized, hey, I could just make the merch myself, bring about 8 buses with us that's bringing straight merch. And when I sell it, I don't have to give them a cut. So now what's happening is that the labels, they're trying to get back to, because they've, at this point, a label is only a bank. The label is trying to get back to offering things that artists don't have to do it themselves. So they're telling the artists, oh, you don't have to make your own website anymore. Just use our outsourced thing called Even, right? Oh, you don't have to do merch. But, again, obviously labels do most merch for people anyway. But they're trying to create more infrastructure to allow them to get some of the real money these artists are touching. Remember, unless you're in a 360 deal, they're only seeing money from your music. So they're trying to incentivize artists that they know are streaming well. Hey, let us deal with your merch. Let us deal with this and third through our official direct-to-consumer model that could basically get some more extra revenue. It's a good plan for them. What I would say, and I'm going to give all artists this advice, I think all artists should invest into, even if you're on a major, you should have a independent setup where maybe you have a team that could do your digital, like specifically your digital. You should have a team that's doing your merch and all these things, because what's happening here is that UMG and the bigger labels are realizing they're losing control, and all they're getting paid from, unless they have artists in the 360, is literally these streams that are kind of like devalued at this point. The money's there, is just going elsewhere, right? How do you think Capitol feels? They gave YoungBoy $35 million. YoungBoy's pocketing $50 million from that tour, right? Like, obviously he has to pay for expenses and shit like that. Yeah, but he's pocketing $40-50 million, right? Let's just say that from a 3-month tour. They're probably not the happiest. Why? Because they're like, hey, you dropped the album with us. That album powered the tour, but we don't get much of it. So, kind of interesting. By the way, this is also very interesting here. The deal with Even arrives weeks after the major music company acquired a minority stake in a superfan app, Stationhead. Now, if you guys don't know what Stationhead is, I know Milagro is on there a bunch, but also Nicki Minaj I've seen on there. And someone sent me like some analytics of, Nicki on there. Fans, you know how you guys donate or subs or whatever? It literally has her albums in there where people just buy her album like consistently. And UMG realized, oh, okay, we now have to incorporate these ways where we could still monetize off the music. So they're investing now in Stationhead, which is kind of dope. It said follows Chairman and CEO Lucian Grange, annual member of the staff, which identified superfan monetization. So again, I don't know if I'm talking above you guys' head, or maybe I'm a little bit, just getting repetitive. And if I ever get repetitive, it's because I want you guys to understand. The point is this. The labels ain't getting that much. Well, they want more money. And their idea of getting more money is basically saying, let's figure out maybe the top 10,000 fans for this person and offer them all the shit in the world that we could probably get way more money. So whether it's through Stationhead, whether it's through merch and direct to consumer, but the labels are in an interesting place where they can't see the growth revenue or the growth of music anymore. And that's why they're not spending. It's simple business here. Remember, I've been telling you about AI. There's trillions of dollars invested in AI because they think it's going to grow to give us tens and, hundreds of trillions of dollars back in the future. So like if I'm, to make it simple, if I'm investing $100 and I'm thinking my return is going to be $1,000, that's kind of good. The labels have stopped really investing as much because they can't see no more growth. You don't invest when you can't see growth. So they're trying to figure it out. And some of these things are them trying to figure it out, right? For even the partnership announced with UMG extends DC blah, blah, launched in April 24. It's onboarded 500,000 artists through direct signups and distribution partnerships, okay, with more than 3,000 labels and distributors in over 110 countries. The platform says it supports 30 different global payment methods and all these currencies, okay? And they report album sales to Luminate, and Luminate is the company that actually reports the Billboard. So, what used to be the issue here is, say for Playboy Cardi. So Playboy Cardi made up a website, right? I don't know if we could pull it up, but he made up a website and he said, yo, everybody pre-order music. And this is the word. He gets like 200,000 people who pre-order the thing, right? Which means they're going to get a CD of it or something of the sort. But the site was kind of ran by him and his management of sorts. And it didn't follow Billboard rules. So when they turned in the sales to Billboard, Billboard made ineligible a bunch of sales. Hey, this didn't follow the rule. Billboard has really specific rules, thanks to Travis Scott and the rest of them, on bundling and doing all this type of stuff. Like, for example, like if you're going to sell merch, you could sell a shirt with a CD, but the shirt got to be shipped in the same week. Some of these guys, they're not going to just have warehouses of clothes ready to just match with a CD and ship out. They're going to just take the orders and they can ship out partially some stuff like, okay, we'll ship out the CD, but we don't have the merch yet. Somebody ordering an extra small. So this company does it for them. So, it's trying to fix some of these problems. They also offer a consumer-facing discovery platform, a marketplace, and a studio, which could transform an artist's website into a dedicated fan destination. So I'm trying to kind of give you guys, and I think you guys are smart, so I don't want to keep repeating myself. The music industry feel like they're hitting their head on a ceiling when they start talking about Patreon, right? It's the same with creators, right? I'm pretty sure, let's say the Joe Budden podcast, they probably were like, hey, we want to be as big as Rogan and get 10 million people watching every episode. And then they probably get to a point where the views are stagnating and they're like, you know what? Let's focus on our top 15 or top 20% of our audience and give them much more. And that's usually what a Patreon is, right? If you say you watch me on YouTube or a podcast, you might come and watch a stream once in a while. The people who watch the podcast, the stream, me on other people's shit, if I have a Patreon, those people will most likely go there. So it's all about the super fan experience, which is kind of ironic because now the labels are following a Patreon model. They're trying to just not gain more fans. They're just trying to exploit the fans and not exploit in a bad way, but they're trying to focus on the super fans. So that's what they're trying to do now. Okay. J. Cole worked with them. J. Cole and Interscope have already used them to power multiple direct-to-fan campaigns, including the 10th anniversary of 2014 Forest Hill Drives and a pre-release strategy of the Fall Off. According to Even, the 2014 Forest Hill Drive campaign helped return the album back to the Billboard Top 15 a decade after its original release. The rollout for the Fallout used similar tools ahead of the official release. The Fall Off debuted number 1 on Billboard this week, and pilot campaigns with UMG artists, including Wale and Virgin Mount Joy, have also demonstrated the platform's thing. Wale project reached the top 20 on Billboard charts with direct-to-fan album sales, meaning played a meaningful role in the chart performance. According to the company, Even says Wale's own audience grew by 300% around the album release. Okay? This is a really interesting strategy, chat. They're just focusing on super fans, which I guess, that works. That works. Okay. By the way, this strategy also came from years of research, and the reason why they're pivoting to this is that they started noticing, like, for example, it happens already for Taylor Swift. Like, when Taylor Swift sells 3 million records, like, almost 800,000 of them are vinyls. Taylor Swift audience is like 17. They don't know what a vinyl player is, but it's a collector's item. So they, Taylor Swift and this vinyl, when you look at how much vinyl is up, like, look, it says Music Distributor Alliance Entertainment says it sold over 60 million vinyl records and 13 million CDs in 2025. People are not buying them because they want to play music off of them. They're buying them because they love the artist so much that no matter what shape or form, if they dropped in a cassette tape, they would buy it. You get what I'm saying? And that's what the labels are now realizing and saying, fuck the growth. We're going to focus on the super fans. So Just keep in mind that, chat. Lastly, before we kind of get into the normal topics here, and I hope you guys aren't tired because we do got to get to a bunch. So I'm sorry if I kind of drag this monologue into a little bit. But TikTok, again, this is a sign that the labels intuitively are losing, but not only the labels, the streaming services are losing themselves. TikTok is now testing, allowing users to stream full songs through Apple Music without leaving the app. So here's the thing. And, Drill, make sure also clip this part too. The problem with music, with everybody flopping, is that music has now become a passive thing. You play music while you're playing a video game. You hear music while you're watching your favorite streamer in the club. It's no reason, there's not an event for music. Right? Like, still a couple artists could do it. Like, J. Cole did it with The Fall Off. Drake is going to do it with his album. And I'm pretty sure if Kendrick wants to do it, he could do it. But there's only a handful of artists that could really make a event out of releasing music. At this point, it's just background noise. Like, and what I mean background noise is that there's no event listening anymore. How many times have some person that you may like their music, but they drop music, and you never really heard the song until you see, I don't know, maybe it's a bad bitch on Instagram, or maybe like one of these gangsta tough dudes, or it could be like one of these funny people, or maybe a favorite creator of yours, use it in a reel. And you're like, oh shit, what song is this? It's on one of your favorite artists' new albums. So discovery is completely new. This is why I also think, the next iteration of this is going to be maybe a rolling chart. Okay, a rolling chart that doesn't come out weekly, but maybe bi-weekly or monthly. Because here's the thing: people aren't staying up for Friday to listen to every new music. Maybe one artist, maybe none. They catch it when they catch it, and that's the thing. So the point is, because we don't have appointment listening anymore. So there's no like, oh shit, this is dropping this Friday. Let me stay up and watch it or listen to it. That has now turned music into a passive thing. It's still being consumed. Music is a quintessential part of our lives. It's still being consumed, just differently. So this is also a change in approach. And obviously, I'm pretty sure Universal, they don't give a fuck because they're going to get paid regardless. But Apple Music did something very smart. Now, granted, here's the thing too. Apple's competing with Spotify. TikTok is just bought by like a whole conglomerate, Oracle people and whatever. Apple has some synergy with TikTok now. I don't know if you guys know. Through some of the deals they were doing and even some of the public biddings that were happening before the app got bought. So what happens is Apple jumped on this, and Apple is now, they've teamed up with TikTok to do a different mentality. And I think this is really dope. Rather than allow TikTok to have a snippet of a song, and then when you click on a song, it opens Apple is saying, you don't have to come to us. We'll come to you. If you're scrolling TikTok all day and you have an Apple account, you don't have to leave the app. Now, this is going to be really interesting. Apple, they know you, they're your phones. They're not fighting for screen time. They're already in your hand. They're in your hand. They're not fighting for screen time. They're not fighting for app downloads. Your phone comes with a music app, which is Apple Music. So they're not fighting for these things. So their demeanor is like, stay on TikTok. You don't ever have to leave TikTok. Stay on there. Here's where Spotify is going to have to adjust. Spotify is not on everybody's phones. Spotify is an app that wants you not to just be on TikTok. They want you to like the artist, then go to Spotify, and then listen on Spotify, listen to a couple more artists, and then possibly listen to a podcast, an audiobook. They need you to leave the app. Apple Music is cool with saying, we don't give a as long, they're going to have something that links the account. So probably a button to be like, hey, link the account. But now you can listen to full music. They've now partnered with TikTok to say, TikTok could be the DSP. We don't give a fuck. Gonna be very interesting, chat. Very, very interesting. That might even spike the amount of people who sign up for Apple Music now, knowing that if they're listening to a song, they don't ever have to come out. They don't ever have to leave the app. Anyway, according to Apple Focus News on 9 to 5 Mac on Monday, the companies are beta testing. So it's not fully yet, but it's not fully launched yet. They're beta testing a feature called Play My Full Song, which would allow TikTok users to stream the full song through Apple Music without having to leave the app. The integration is based on Apple Music Kit framework, which let third-party developers integrate Apple Music into their own apps. Again, if you know anything about Apple, Apple doesn't really like people fucking with their, like, let's say the MacBook, right? They lock down that, it's not open source. It's not, you can't go build your own fucking, version or tweak their version of OS X. Get out of here. You could only get theirs. But they've realized and started taking a page from, other people who have allowed, integration in some sense. Obviously, you can't fuck with Apple shit, but you could integrate it within your app. And obviously gives them a leg up. The companies are also reportedly testing a listen party thing, which would allow groups of users to stream music at the same time within TikTok. Chat, that's what we do on stream. So Apple Music, look like they're making some moves here. They're creating a shared listen experience similar to the now defunct Turntable FM service. Okay. All right. So, and by the way, it's according to TikTok, those 3 billion plus song saves were responsible for generate billions of streams, driving music into the charts. Okay. TikTok's been doubling down. Last year, TikTok released a second annual music impact report carried in conjunction with the market monitor Illuminate. The report shows that 80% of the songs that reached Billboard Global 200 last year went viral first on TikTok. Very important. 84% of songs that go viral now. This is why your labels, they're in shambles, right? How do you, if TikTok, is a little bit resistant to, bending over, like how the radio stations bent over to radio programming, right? Like, remember it's this pay to play thing that's not payola, wink, wink. So you pay a radio team and you get your song you spend millions behind in rotation all the time. TikTok, there is no real pay to play. Yeah, you could pay some influencers to try and make something viral, but it doesn't necessarily always work. A random song by some random person with a random dance or a random, stupid ass, video could go viral. And the report shows that 84% of the songs that made it onto the Billboard Global, and that's a global chart for Billboard, which is not a album chart, it's a song chart, but just globally, not in the US. It went first viral on TikTok. So again, TikTok is winner. And another 12% went viral on TikTok after hitting a global chart. Okay. So basically saying TikTok has more impact on the charts than the charts have on TikTok. And only 4% of the charts, tracks on the charts didn't experience a viral moment. So essentially, you are one, if you have a song that's on this, Billboard Global 200, it's a 1 in 20% or 4% chance that it didn't already go viral on TikTok. So basically, you need to go viral on TikTok. That's basically what I'm kind of saying. All right, these ever comes as Apple Music struggles to maintain its position against Spotify. Okay, so that's their move against Spotify. Market share of the U.S. digital subscribers dropped 25%. Oh, okay, that's why they're doing it. So Spotify been kicking ass. Obviously Spotify spends a lot more money. That's their bread and butter. That's their baby. They've always led Apple with it. They're spending money on podcasters. They're spending money on original programming. And they have some synergy coming with Spotify and Netflix, which is another move that's going to happen. Anyway, globally, Apple. All right, cool. All right, great. Anyway, to attract more premium subscribers. Okay, great. So that's what it is. So they're just trying to get new people. All right. Enough of my music business spiel. Maybe I should do this at the end of the streams rather than the beginning. I know some of y'all are like, boring. We could get on to some interesting thing. Someone did say something dope to me in DMs, and I told you I read all my DMs, even if I don't respond. Because they sent me this, and I ironically found it at the same time, so that was a great DM to read. But they said, Ak, you have to talk about this during your segment the Academy. And I thought about it. I was like, kind of what we do. I like that series name. You know how they have TED Talks? I think when I'm over here trying to give y'all a game and I'm trying to give y'all, business, insider alerts on what's going on, I think we should call that like, I don't know, like Music Academy or something like that. That's a dope segment. Anyway. All right, let's move on. What do y'all want to talk about, man? The